started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and now...
That's right. We are live.
The ghost faced himself, Brandon Tanev.
This isn't like the start of last season when it was just, it looked like the Canucks were just a beer league team not playing defense at all. And just before Chris goes, no, I'm kidding, Chris, you can actually go now.
no, hold on.
Oh, we had to give more time for coming on late. So.
I still had, hold on. All right. Chris go, and then I got something else to say at the end.
So, an elf and a midget in 2 back-to-back games. He's definitely on a friendship tour for sure.
Saying, oh yeah, I'm okay with him being, the 6'7" defenseman. No! He is a AHL defenseman right now.
Look, Shonky, don't mind Devin, okay? We all struggle with Devin, so you know.
Well, hello and welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks. You can subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. As we are here on a Wednesday, sorry, a little late for those that are listening or watching live. My fault. I had a couple of things I had to get done today, and I just fell behind. So, but we're here now. Happy Wednesday to you. Hello, Chris. How are you doing?
Hello, Kev. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm not 100%. I'm playing injured. I have a headache, but I'm going to get through this as I rub my head on the, as for those watching. But we have here, it looks like the fall wind is about to hit. It's been summery 27 degrees. I think it's going to be warm tomorrow still, but you're getting that little bit of that fall Christmas in the air. So it's starting to feel like hockey season a little bit.
Here in the Okanagan, we're still kind of averaging in the high 20s as opposed to the low 30s. So, still essentially a desert-esque climate, but yeah, it's starting to cool down.
Good. Sean, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, we're getting closer to hockey season. We're a week and a half away from the Young Stars tournament out in Penticton. I'm celebrating by wearing what I've dubbed my Kuzmenko shirt with all the lemons on it. So yeah, if you don't know that story, Patrick Alvin. What happened was Kuzmenko asked for water with lemon in it when they had the meeting to when they were courting him, and they didn't have it, but they brought in like a bowl full of lemons next day. So I've now dubbed this my Kuzmenko shirt.
There we go.
I'm excited. It's I do love the summer, but I love my hockey, and I can't wait for to get some to see some of that good coming up here.
Yes, it's exciting. Young Stars Classic coming up. Training camp is coming up. And I think we're going to be in a bit of a news dump here and we were certainly today. There were 2 contracts today, and one we'll get into. And I think there's an entire conversation. I think most of this is going to be around how we're perceiving a lot of players and what they're worth, to give you a bit of a tease. But the story out of Vancouver is J.T.Miller. Friday, so Brad Treliving, he works at 9:00 at night. Patrick Alvin works on Fridays on the long weekends. That's the Alvin way. And Alvin and the Canucks announced a 7-year, $56 million, $58 million extension for J.T.Miller. And of course, they both spoke to the media this week, Tuesday, as we were back from Labor Day, back on Monday. And I did the whole instant reaction back on Friday. So I'm going to give the floor more to Sean and Chris to start on this. I do have some additional thoughts that I'd like to give, but I want to give Sean and Chris the floor. So I'll let you two fight over it. How about that?
I'll let Chris go because I have a tendency to steal people's thoughts. So go for it, Chris.
That and yeah, the oxygen in the room. Sean likes to talk sometimes. But no, I'm happy that we don't have to constantly debate and hypothesize what's going to happen with J.T.Miller. Now we actually know he's under contract for the next 7 seasons at $8 million per, and I ultimately am okay with this. I think that obviously it's a calculated risk that he's going to drop off in the second half of that contract, and that he's not going to be worth that $8 million in that back half. But hopefully, he will prove in the first half of it that he's at least worth that $8 million mark, like he proved last season that he is that in that echelon of player. And yeah, I'm ultimately comfortable with it as long as we are able to also sign Bo without having to move out of body, which Alvin said should be the situation.
Well, I think they will end up having to move out of body, but it won't be to re-sign Bo Horvat. I think that'll be more in regards to finding a way to build up that blue line a little bit more than anything else. I think it is a calculated risk. There is risk in this deal, and I know that there's a lot of talk about that all over social media and in the media, and then to sort of negate that wouldn't be projecting a well balanced and well thought out look at this contract. But you also look at, we're going to see the cap go up in 2 years, probably very significantly.
Just in time for Petey to get his payday.
Yes. But if you, at that point, let's look, if J.T.Miller can be an effective quote unquote middle six or top 9 forward for 5 to 6 years of that deal, I don't know why we should be hand wringing too much about that. I think you're going to see him put up probably at minimum 70 points, hopefully 80 plus for at least 4 years of that deal, I think. And then if he can still be a good offensive producer, and if he can find a way to just tighten up some of the loosey goosey plays that he does have at times, then there shouldn't be any issues, at least for the majority of the contract. The back end whenever you sign a late 20s player to a deal like this is always going to be the issue, and it's still not my preference to do so, but it's also where the market's going. And what I think is going to be interesting is come 3-4 years from now, there's going to be so much cap locked up in these long-term deals that everyone else is not going to have anything left.
Yeah, it kind of squeezes the middle class out of the picture, and basically all the veterans that probably should be getting middle of the road sort of contracts are going to have to essentially, if they want to still play in the NHL, take bargain basement contracts to still be able to play. Kind of the Joe Thornton, Spezza-esque sort of contracts that we've seen in the past couple of years.
Yeah, and even look at there's Calvin DeHaan. Why is he not signed? You still have Sonny Milano and Evan Rodriguez. Why aren't they signed? But that's part of the deal. When you look at the cap of it, the teams that have cap, a lot of them are just it's Chicago and Arizona who are legitimately tanking for Connor Bedard. Or they're teams like Colorado who cannot sign long-term deals at anyone else to a multi-year deal right now because they've got Nathan McKinnon coming up next season. So when I look, just because you have an idea of what these players, how long a player should be signing for, if they're not willing to do that and everyone else is signing them to long-term deals, I'm not sure. You're going to have to change your approach a little bit. You're going to have to find a way to work within the market that's out there. And I think that's what Patrick Allvin has done this whole offseason. He had grand plans. Yes. He wanted to move out cap space. He couldn't. He wanted to revamp the blue line. He hasn't been able to that at this point. But he also grabbed he also grabbed good players where he could. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people really understand in this situation for the Canucks. Yes, in an ideal world, they probably move on from J.T.Miller, get a first-round pick, get a prospect, get a young player, and then go and then build from there. But the other issue is Thatcher Demko's signed at a sweetheart of a deal at $5 million cap hit for another 4 seasons. This one and 3 others. And if you're looking at these hypothetical winning windows, if I'm the Canucks, that's the window I'm looking at. Because when Thatcher Demko's contract is up, he's likely looking
close to playing then what he's like right now. He's in for a big raise.
He's in for a big raise, and you're going to have to move things around here. The other thing I look at, and it was can't remember who actually talked about it, but it was Brandon Sutter talked about how it felt the heart was ripped out of that locker room. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast. The heart was ripped out of the locker room when they lost Tanev and Markstrom, let alone you look at losing a good player like Toffoli. And I think under Bruce Boudreau, they found that locker room chemistry again. And to move on from someone who's a big part of that in J.T.Miller, that's tough. And it's going to be the same. That's the same argument I have with when people, because guess what, Chris? We're now done talking about what's going to happen with J.T.Miller, and we're now moving on to what's going to happen with Bo Horvat. And my argument there would be, why would you want to rip another heart, the heart out of the locker room again for the second time in 2 years?
And he's not only a heart and soul player, but he's also the team captain. Like there's an extra level of that element that you would be tearing out of the dressing room.
So I think all in all, I think it's actually a good piece of work by Patrick Allvin. I think he looked at the market and said, well, this may not be the market that I want, but I still have to play in it. And Here we go.
I think a little bit of the Canucks fandom, and especially Canucks Twitter frustration is coming from is where like Rutherford and Allvin basically, like you said, had these grand plans and made these kind of bold proclamations of this is what we need to do. We need to clear up cap space. We need to do yada, yada, yada. And they haven't been able to essentially do what they said that they wanted to do because either the trade market wasn't where they thought it was, either players that they were maybe seeking out were more expensive than what they ended up having in their budget. Like the reality of the situation has caused a little bit of a change of course as far as the management is concerned. And to some Canucks fans, the sky is falling. But realistically, like I can understand a little bit of frustration, but it's just the reality of the situation, and you just have to roll with the punches.
Okay, so I'm gonna push this a little further here. And I'm probably going to piss some people off, especially those that are in love with data, analytics, and graphs. You're not going to be happy with what I'm about to say, and I'm gonna piss you right off. Are you ready? You can draw me a graph. You could tell me about your championship window. You can tell me all about your cap and when you're going to win. If I have players with heart and passion, I will kick your ass 100% of the time. Every single fucking time. You know why? because heart and passion beat data all the time. It is organic, it is real, and if you want to have a good look at the Colorado Avalanche, and if you want to have a good look at what the Tampa Bay Lightning, and you want a good look at why they win, look at the goal that Nazem Kadri scored in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. Go back, find that. That is a goal of heart, passion, skill, and desire to win. Braden Point, Game 5. The Lightning were on the brink of elimination. They were done. Braden Point comes in and look at that goal. That is how you win Stanley Cups. J.T.Miller brings that in spades. For those that don't think that, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Flat out, unbelievably wrong. To even suggest, and I'm going to say this with all due respect to the players involved, to even suggest that you're going to acquire Philip Sheetal, Niels Lundqvist, and a first-round pick for J.T.Miller and think that you're on your way to a better team, you're nuts. You're nuts. You're just flat-out nuts. J.T.Miller is the type of player that you win cups with. Is he cantankerous? Yes. You know who else is cantankerous? Leon Draisaitl. Look what he did in the playoffs. The Vancouver Canucks, I'm sorry, the Vancouver Canucks are soft. They're a soft team. They're still easy to play against. And J.T. Miller is not. And you need more J.T. Millers in this lineup. I just am flabbergasted at some of the takes around J.T. Miller this weekend. He's not a good player. Are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me at this point?
Because he signed a contract you don't agree with, and now all of a sudden a 99-point player is not good enough?
I'm sorry, but I'm floored at the comments. I just cannot believe this with JT Miller. It is baffling to me that you think that you can win without a JT Miller type of trade. Now, you know what? If you wanted, because I've seen the comments about you should have made the trade so you get assets. Do you go to the store and do you purchase, when you purchase an apple, do you just take the rottenest apple and say, well, at least I got an apple? Or do you actually look and figure it out and say, man, I really want that good, tasty, delicious apple? The market wasn't there. It just simply wasn't. And a lot of the times it's not the trades you make, it's the trades you don't. And the market simply wasn't there for JT Miller. And you just can't make a trade. That is poor asset management. So I think we're the only podcast in the Canucks community that is approved of the JT Miller. I think everybody else is like nuts and wrong. But I think we're the only one that has approved of the contract. But I'm going to say this again. You don't win cups without JT Miller type of players. And by the way, heart of the team, Chris Tanev, Jacob Markstrom, look what they've done in Calgary. Sorry, you just don't give that away. You cannot if you want to win things. And Crosby, if you don't think that Crosby is a heart and soul type of player, you're wrong. If you don't think Malkin's a heart and soul type of player, you're wrong. You just don't win without those type of players. It's not like about you don't graph your way to a Stanley Cup. I'm sorry. You don't data. You will never data your way to a Stanley Cup. It will never happen.
Data and all that has its place, and it actually helps you. What it should do is identify players that you should look at. You should go and scout in person with your own eyes. But it's something that you have to. There is still a gut feel. There's still a heart and everything that you talked about there, Kev, that can't be measured by any of the data that's out there. And let alone making sure that you know what a move will do to your locker room. And I honestly think that this is one of these deals that I think we'll look back on and say they made the right choice. I think so, because I look at what he does, and especially with JT Miller, if he can find a way to just get rid of those lazy plays that just creep in every once in a while. If he gets rid of those and becomes more of a two-way player, that deal will age a lot better than a lot of people are screaming that it won't.
Well, and I also think, and I look at how players also impact other players, and there's like the trend right now is we're seemingly to want to play. We're not happy with the 29 and older players getting these contracts. We seem to be happy with the 25 and under getting these contracts. But I look at what how Miller is going to influence and impact the locker room. And I see a guy like Podkolzin really benefiting from a Miller in that room because I see a lot of similarities. I don't know if Podkolzin will ever be a center. That's not what I'm saying, but he's a guy that I think can drive play. I think there's a guy that can play with a lot of passion. Is there a possibility of some lazy plays there? Sure. Is there a possibility that he's going to be emotional? Sure. But I think that having a J.T.Miller with a Vasily Podkolzin there, I think really will help Podkolzin. And I think the other thing that hasn't been really talked much about this week, or I haven't heard it, is the fact that Patrick Allvin and Bruce Boudreau called J.T.Miller their number one center. And I think that was a point of emphasis for Miller, but that also talks to me a little bit about the challenge that Elias Pettersson is in front of. And it's not a criticism of Pettersson, but it's an opportunity. I think one of the things that has happened within the last 5 to 7 years with this organization is, and I think especially when the Sedins left, is nobody's pushing anybody. There's no one really pushing anybody to be a little bit better. And I think that's what J.T.Miller does, is he pushes players to get better. I don't think it's always comfortable for a lot of people, but I think he does it. And, as far as the laziness, I'll just lean back into Draisaitl. That guy makes a lot of lazy defensive plays, and he's considered the second best hockey player in the world. I don't know. I'm higher on J.T.Miller than a lot of other people, and I get it. I get it. I was one wearing my Flames colors that would have been very open for a trade for him for Matthew Tkachuk, and a lot of other people have shaken their head. But I'm higher on him than a lot of other people. I get it, but I just think that some of the takes this week, I had to shake my head.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is and this goes into something that I'm going to be working on this year as a hockey fan. Sports fandom is supposed to be fun. And if all you're doing is bitching and moaning and complaining about every fucking move, is that actually fun? It ain't fun for me. And if or especially if you're spending that time when you're arguing with other people and you're insulting their intelligence and saying that, literally, I saw that from many of people, like how people just insulting the other side's intelligence. I have done it. I'm not a perfect person. Far from it. You guys seen me get very riled up and very emotional and very triggered. And I think but a part of that is that's because there's a lot of underlying things that are probably driving that more than what the issue is with these moves. So for me, am I trying to do some personal growth here into this season? I'm going to try and enjoy it a little bit more. I'm going to try and sit back. I'm going to sort of paraphrase Chris Gear here. I'm going to sit back and relax and enjoy. Because I look at this Canucks roster, and yes, it's not perfect. And yes, that blue line leaves a lot to be desired. But I feel like there's something there where they could surprise people. That the depth that they have from whatever is whoever's the number one center, and on that number one line, if it's J.T.Miller, if it's Petey, if it's Bo. but they've got the depth up front that is like it's really good. And if they can figure out some defensive structure and help out that blue line a little bit better and still be able to put up goals, why can't they be a playoff team? Why can't they look at this and go, let's start building something here? Because the other thing with me here is everyone's all upset that they haven't done anything with the blue line. What was out there? What was realistically out there that they could have done to upgrade this blue line right now? I don't think there was anything.
All the big defenseman names disappeared, and they were overpaid out of our budget. So yeah, there was no way.
Did you want them instead of signing Ilya Mikheyev? Did you want them to go 4x4 for Eric Branson? No,
and I think no chance of getting Burns or Klingberg or any of those names.
No, I think if you take a look at what was realistically out there for the Canucks to do, I think Alvin did a pretty solid job.
Well, you look at this division in terms of its defense, like the Oilers, I don't think that the Oilers have a great defense, like a great 6 blue line. I don't. I don't think the Vegas Golden Knights have a spectacular blue line. I think
blue line is slow,
very slow. The Ducks certainly. I think the Ducks have an up and coming blue line. It will be interesting to see what they do with John Klingberg. As far as the Flames go, I've said this before. The Flames fans may think that D is elite. It's not elite. It may be solid, but I'm going to tell you something. They better figure out Mackenzie Weegar to tweet, because they certainly don't want to be in a Johnny Gaudreau situation again. So that's a big question. And again, I'm going to say this again. I'm not convinced about Chris Tane's health. San Jose is San Jose, and Seattle
San
is
Jose's
Seattle.
crap. Seattle is mad.
Yeah. But let's even dig into this a little bit further. Is Tampa Bay's defense, do you look at that and go, man, I wish I had the Tampa Bay Lightning defense? You wish you had Victor Hedman. You may wish you had Mikhail Sergachev, but there's not. I don't want that entire blue line. There's a lot of. I don't think that's high step there.
There's the one thing with the Flames blue line, Kev, is there's no true number one.
Right.
It reminds me so much of the Canucks. It reminds me so much of the Canucks in 2011, where we had a bunch of really good number twos.
But I mean, I don't know if you need an elite. The only defense that one of them I would say. I have to think about this a little bit more. But the most elite of the defense is the Colorado Avalanche, because they have the best hockey player in the world. If I'm going to piss people off, let's just piss people off. It's Cale Makar, and I'm standing by it. I just, to me, it's I think that there's more defense. Group of six that are closer to where the Canucks are at. I mean, imagine being a Winnipeg. You talk about, not getting anything done. I'm all over the map here. Imagine being a Winnipeg Jets fan, and that blue line, and what was not done this offseason. There's
talk about a team that we thought was gonna have fireworks and
yeah.
They haven't done really anything.
The only person that made any fireworks was Sarah Orlesky.
But the Jets this offseason have been as boring as the province that they're from.
Yeah.
But I just look at where this Canucks team is at. I'm expecting the Flames offense to not be nearly as good as last season's. Yeah, they've got a good defense. Yeah, they've got Markstrom in nets, but that'll pull them back to the pack a little bit. Vegas is slow. It sounds like Mark Stone might not be healthy for the start of the season, so they're going to be.
They have a net,
and yeah, Logan Thompson and Laurent Brossoit in net, and even Laurent Brossoit is not fully for sure yet as well.
And then they also pick up Hill as well.
Yes, they did.
picked up Hill. But then Edmonton, they're going to score a lot of goals. But yeah, that blue line leaves a lot to be desired too. It's there. The Pacific Division is still not locked up at all. I don't think it's not like it's the Central Division where you've got Colorado and everyone else. It's not like the Northeast Division where you've got Toronto, Tampa, and then there's probably a bit of a drop off after that. Like I think I look at the Pacific Division and I think it's there for the taking if they can get off to a good start and they can figure out that they can figure out the penalty kill specifically, because if the Canucks 5-on-5 play last year wasn't bad, they just got killed by the penalty kill over and over and over and over again.
That month of November killed them.
So I look at that and I go, okay, and also patience. This isn't Alvin was not going to be able to revamp this whole team in one off season, especially when a lot of the market changed. Because you look at for older players, the trade market wasn't there. Burakovsky got traded from Columbus to Seattle for a couple mid-round picks. The Canucks fans been happy with that? No. You also have Pat Trady got traded to Carolina for nothing.
Future considerations.
They had to add Dylan Coughlin to that. Maybe they knew. Maybe there was something where they knew his Achilles was done, but you just look at all that and then just it wasn't there. And at some point, you have to reassess how you're approaching the environment that you're working in. And that's what Alvin did. And he still went out and got Mikheyev, which I think is a great pickup, because I think he's going to really help that depth on the one in the lineup. Curtis Lazar is a good, solid pickup. Let's not forget the moves he made at the deadline, where he moved out Hamonic and brought in Travis Dermott. I think that was a very smart and shrewd move. So it's at some point you have to work with what you got and and understand what the actual market is what the actual market is. And I think there's some people out there, fans, media, they're so entrenched and stuck in the idea of what a perfect build, rebuild, whatever is, that they can't move off of that thought for some reason, because everyone's screaming rebuild. I'm like, why? The core is here. You're trying to build around the core. A rebuild is finding a new core.
We've graduated past the rebuild stage, where now, if anything, you would use the word, if we're using any word, it would be retool. You're basically trying to improve it along the edges, not the center of the team.
Yeah. And you've got the key pieces. You've got an elite starting goaltender in Thatcher Demko. You've got a number one defenseman in Quinn Hughes. And now you're so strong up the middle with J.T.Miller, Pettersson, and Horvat, let alone Lazar as your fourth line center. Like I look at that and let's see what this team can do. They played so well under Bruce Boudreau. Why are you wanting to rip it apart again? Why are you wanting to rip the heart out of the locker room again? Let's see what this team can do.
And I also think with Bruce Boudreau, I just think that there is, and Ryan, listening to Donnie and Dolly again, and we're talking to Ryan Henderson, or hearing Ryan Henderson say that you can see that there's just a bit more positive environment with Bruce Boudreau. It's the way he's talking. He talks to the media. You look back at the draft and that whole meeting with Kevin Owens. You look even the kids are wandering at the stair and he's doing the introductions. I just think he's just so lighthearted and so aw shucks, and it just he's a kid in a lot of ways, and I think that there's just something endearing about that, and I do think it brings some lightness into that locker room where I think the previous two coaching staffs in the previous regime, it just felt heavy. Whenever you heard either one of them talk about let's use a good example here. An example I'll have here. Bruce Boudreau's conversation talking about Niels Höglander. He didn't think Höglander was necessarily great, but he didn't dump him in the media. Where Travis Green, if someone didn't play well, he would use, he's okay. He's okay. Like I don't know. To me, you could feel a very different vibe with Bruce Boudreau, and I do think that there's something to be said for that. I don't think that that's lost on players. I think I look at the Oilers situation. I think that's the same thing. I think Jay Woodcroft brought something completely different and lighter in the room than what Dave Tippett did, and it just helped the players. And I do think that that's something that you can take advantage of a little bit here with Vancouver. So I'm with you. I think that people are kind of writing off the Canucks. I wouldn't write them off. Oh, I think they're Stanley Cup contenders, or I'm not saying that, but I think that they can compete for a playoff spot. And I think just let's have a look and wait till the season starts. And just let's drop the graphs a bit and just watch the game.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of where it is. I always remember this time of year where it's end of August, early September, where people start getting a little antsy for hockey and they start getting a little grumpy because there's no hockey out there. So I think that might settle things down a little bit, but yeah, let's just get going here. Let's watch some hockey. Let's see what the line combinations are, because that's always fun, playing some armchair coaching and trying to figure out what the lines are going to look like.
Yeah. Before the one other thing I wanted to say is there's fan bases that plan parades, and there are fan bases that are like gloom and sometimes some fans that are gloom and doom, and it's always never as good as you think. And it's never as bad as you think. It's somewhere in the middle, and I think a lot of this is you have to wait it out. And let's just see what happens there. Do we want to touch on Horvat here before we do the line combination, or?
Well, I think the thing with Horvat is I think this probably helps set the market, at least for his agent, to try and figure out what at least the cap dollar will look like, whether he goes 7 years or maybe a little bit shorter, or goes 8. We'll see. But he's a key piece. I know I've seen people say trade him for defense and all that, but I think you can find a way to trade some wingers for defense, maybe later on in the season or in next off season. And just see what this team can do this year. I think that's what I want to see. I want to see what this team looks like on the ice as currently constructed. Because I think Mikheyev adds something. I think if we can see maybe a bounce back season from Höglander, that's going to be huge. You got Kuzmenko coming in, maybe some more some more growth from. And maturity from Podkolzin. That'd be fantastic to see as well. Like, there's still a lot to like and a lot to expect growth in this from this team.
Yeah, with the depth of the forward group, and then if the defense group is at least serviceable throughout the season, I think the Canucks have a decent chance at making the playoffs. The Pacific Division is for the taking. Like, you could make the argument that Calgary and Edmonton are probably 1 and 2 in the division. But after that, it's kind of up for grabs. Vegas is not as reliable as they once were the past couple of seasons. LA is up and coming. Vancouver is pushing that playoff bubble as well. So yeah, I honestly think it's for the taking this season.
And I think to me, I think the one thing I will say though is I think you want to get this Horvat deal done sooner rather than later, and that's not just because I can do an instant reaction. I just think you want. I think I wonder just in general what happened in Calgary with Johnny Gaudreau how that has impacted a whole bunch of other teams, and I think in some ways it has and it hasn't. I look at it like, Johnny Gaudreau kind of changed his mind last minute, and I sincerely believe that Bo Horvat wants to stay in Vancouver. I don't think that there's a hum and a haw about it, and I do believe that Vancouver wants to keep him. But I also don't think that I think that you want to try to make these decisions on UFAs. I think you're going to see teams. I wonder if you're going to see teams want to make these decisions a lot quicker to not be in that Johnny Gaudreau situation. Even Pittsburgh with Evgeny Malkin and how that all turned out, because he ended up going to UFA until I think Sidney Crosby knocked on Brian Burke and Ron Hextall's door and said, "Hello, you bring that guy back." Yeah. So I think that you want to try to get these settled a lot. You want to make the decision more quicker than possible if you can. And I think ideally before the season starts, you want to get Horvat done.
Yeah, I think that was a big reason why Miller got done when it did. I think the Canucks management group basically realized, hey, we're on the verge of going into training camp, and this still hasn't been resolved. And I believe it had gotten out there that Miller's agent had basically said, we're shutting down negotiations once the season started. And as soon as I saw that headline, I'm pretty sure Rutherford and Alvin had the same thought that I did of, this could be Gaudreau all over again. And they probably kind of acted and ponied up when they did because they don't want to repeat what happened with Johnny Hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's you look at that and you want to make sure that there's no distractions. And especially in the Vancouver market where, as we see, it's the trade Bo Horvat conversations are already happening. The more quicker you shut them down, the better.
And you don't. I mean, we've already. I'll just agree with what everybody says. I don't think you need to trade Bo Horvat. I don't think you should trade Bo Horvat. I think you want to have that strong up the middle line. I think that this contract is going to be fascinating because it's going to be interesting to have a potential $7 million third line center over 30 in a couple of years. But I think that's down the road, not right now.
But the other thing is, I think we need to reassess how with that quote unquote third line center type talking, right? I think if you have that depth, then you can roll three strong offensive lines, including one that might be a good matchup line. Why the hell not?
Yeah, the forward depth that we have this season is, I would say, markedly improved from last season. Like, as much as Lamico and Mott were fan favorites last season, to have a fourth line that has Dickinson, Höglander, and Lazar, I think is probably a stronger fourth line and probably a stronger bottom six than we've had probably since being a playoff team.
Let's look at the Flames. They're going to have Backlund as the $6 million third line center. I don't think that's an issue. Look at Milan Lucic. He's a cult hero here in Calgary. He's a five and a bit on the cap fourth line grinder. Like if I think we have to get it, and that's part of the whole being just open to the idea and just sitting back and watching and relaxing and enjoying it instead of being so caught up on what the quote unquote right way to build a team is. There is no right way to build the team. Let's look at you talked about the blue lines there, Kev. Let's compare Tampa and Colorado. Does Tampa have a really good right side defenseman, right shot defenseman?
Eric Chernak is solid. I wouldn't call him great, but I would call him solid. I know Devin loves him. I don't want to diss Devin here.
No, I like Chernak. He's a good 4. But do they really have a top pair right shot defenseman? No. They haven't had one for both their cup wins. They built that on a very strong left side with Hedman, McDonough, and Sergachev.
And they'll miss McDonough.
They will.
They will miss Mariah McDonough.
And then now you look at Colorado. They've got Makar, best player in the world.
Thank you.
No, I completely agree with that. Everyone talks about best players in the world. It's always fucking forwards. Everyone talks about the skill of players. No one talks about the skill of playing defense. I mean, we do. We've talked about it all the time on here, Kev. It's one of the few things that Kevin and I actually agree on.
I'm pretty sure it's the same 3 of us that were on for that exact episode. And yeah, Sean and I did not argue your point there, Kev.
And so, there's different ways. And if that's why I looked at what the Canucks could do here. You've got OEL, you've got Hughes, and maybe Rathbone can take a step. That's a pretty solid left side if everything plays out right. Or you move one over to the right side. There's so many different ways to look at this, and just because one team built it a certain way doesn't mean that it has to be built that way. Was St. Louis's blue line built the same way as those last 2? No. They actually have a stronger right side than left side.
I've listened to a couple blues. I've listened to a couple blues podcasts, and they'll tell you we may love Colton Parayko, they don't.
He hasn't been as good as he was back in in the 18-19 season, and let alone from when he broke into the league until the cup run, he was fantastic. He hasn't been as good of late. But in that 18-19 season, yeah, they had a very good blue line. They had the Norris. I think Pietrangelo won the Norris that year. They had Vince Dunn, he's one of those offensive defensemen that in the right system and in the right team, he looks fantastic. You put him in Seattle, he looks pretty average, doesn't he?
And that's the average in Seattle.
Well, that's part of it too. Is we can get into that. We'll get into this a little bit later when you talk about Ottawa and what they've done with Tim Stutzle and how they've done it with other players, including Thomas Chabot. But if you don't have if you're just relying on one player to basically run your blue line, especially if they're a bit younger and they haven't learned how to play defense properly, because it is a skill. There's only so much you can do. So there's different ways to build a winning team. Hell, look at the cup winners in that Jimmy Rutherford has built. None of those blue lines are vaunted. I mean, having Malkin and Crosby up the middle really helps.
They even got a cup without Letang one time.
Yeah, but you can still do it. So yeah, I just look at that and I think there's different ways to build successful teams in this league, and it's not going to happen overnight. For the Canucks to take that next step, they need all their young players to take the next step. They need Podkolzin and Höglander, And they need Kuzmenko to come in and be an impact player. They need Rathbone to step in and grab a top 6 spot, because I think he does have a better upside than any of the other options that they have for that role. So I just look at that and like, let's see what happens, and let's enjoy the ride instead of pining over what could have been and why did this team not follow my exact plan that I spent 20 hours thinking about. Let's enjoy it. Let's see what happens.
Well, you talk about a guy that you talk about plans. I love what Elliot Friedman has been saying is, you plan, God laughs. The Flames have been a great example of that. You have a plan coming into this offseason, then one player changes his mind and the other player says, I don't want to be there anymore. And now that changes everything, right? So I think you got to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and you got to just also be prepared to roll with the punches. So, too. And that's, yeah. Anyway.
Bowie agrees, too.
Yes, he does.
But yeah, if we're gonna go into some line combinations, there's a lot to work with here. Like, if you're looking at wanting to maybe build a sort of, because I think you put Petey with Besser. I think you build a line around that. I think you look at. The more I look at it. And then after that, I think it's all up for grabs, honestly. I think Miller's doing his best to petition for a Podkolzin on his wing. But what I'd like to, and then maybe you throw. What I did have was Podkolzin, Pettersson, Besser as a one line. You have Mikheyev, Horvat, Garland as a line, because I think that you can build a line that can be a bit of a matchup line that way. They can take a little bit more of the tougher minutes. And then could you imagine having, say, like a Pearson or Höglander on one wing, Kuzmenko on the other, and Miller in the middle as like just a line that can just like that's a matchup breaking line. That's what's so cool. And like, you can throw different combinations in there. And I don't think there's until we see it on the ice, I don't think there's a wrong answer.
Yeah. And that's why I was saying, like, with the forward depth that we have this season, like, there's really no like weak line. Like, they're all decently strong for what they offer, regardless of who you're slotting where.
So and then that leaves like Höglander or Pearson with Lazar and Dickinson on the fourth line. And then you've got Lockwood and Joshua, who, as Kevin said, those are players that make the Canucks a harder team to play against. I won't go as far as saying the Canucks are soft. I think they were at the first half of the season, but I think they really turned it around under Boudreau, and adding players like Mikheyev, Joshua, and keeping Miller, I think is gonna go a long way to helping that.
I don't disagree. I think you look at it in pairs. I think Pettersson and Besser is an obvious pair. Miller and Podkolzin, I think, would be a good pair. I think there's been the traditional Horvat Pearson pairing. I wonder if we see Tanner Pearson take a bit more of a lesser role though this year. And maybe we see, I mean, I want to see Höglander have a really good camp, but I wonder if we see a Höglander, or maybe we see a I have Garland with Miller and Podkolzin. I'd like to see that. And then maybe a Horvat Höglander pair, and you add maybe Kuzmenko in there. I'm not one that wants to automatically put Kuzmenko in the top 6 or top 9. I want to see what he's doing before I just slot him in somewhere. Like I think he's got to earn that spot. And I think, yeah, you got Curtis Lejar and Jason Dickinson, and I think that's a good fourth line combination. Do disagree with you, Chris. I do think that they would be better with Tyler Mott there than not. I think you look at what Tyler Mott did for the Rangers in the playoffs. I think that would be a really good ad. I'm a Tyler Mott fan. I really like the way he plays, but you've got the pairs. The forward depth is. I think the forward depth is there, and I think I do want to see Will Lockwood get a really good look at camp, and I think he's earned that. And I'd like
I think
to see.
he will.
Yeah, he gets that, and I'm intrigued by Dakota Joshua. I'm really interested in seeing what he could do. I think he's 12, 13, or a first call up, but I hope he pushes some people in this lineup.
Yeah, I think the Crash and Bangers really are going to, because we need them in the line. But it's just a matter of where they slot in, if they can basically earn it over someone else.
Yeah, I the way I look at it is Höglander has to prove himself and make it out of camp. Kuzmenko does as well, as does, and then you've got Lockwood and Joshua pushing. It's there, as you said, Kev. You need that competition, and you need to be you need players pushing each other, and I think they have got that, at least, especially up front.
Although I just do want to quickly add that I also really liked Mott as well. I was just more so just saying, as an overall fourth line, I feel like this year's iteration would be stronger in comparison to last season, even though I very much miss Mott being here.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I
How is he not signed, by the way?
Yeah.
Him and Evan, they're looking for $2 million, and no one has the cap space.
Again, just it's because everyone's locking these long-term deals up with top-end players, or making the bets on younger players.
Yeah, the teams,
that's what they are.
A decent amount of teams were already cap strapped before the pandemic, but then the flat cap that the pandemic basically brought on, or I guess extended, has made it even more worse. It's an exponential problem in the NHL now, as far as teams being up against the cap and not having money to spend on quality players that are lower in their lineup.
I remember going through this earlier, and right now there are 11 teams that are over the cap. Most of them have LTIR abilities to use LTIR to get under the cap.
Kind of like what the Habs did with Price, or are likely to do with Price.
Yeah, they're one of them. Sorry, 13. There's 13 teams, and then there's another 4 that have less than $1 million in cap space. Yeah, it's there's so many teams that are so damn close to the cap. Yeah, they've squeezed out this the middle class a little bit.
Yeah.
Where are the Canucks in that, not ranking, if you will, but where are the Canucks as far as their flexibility at this point?
They are, according to Cap Friendly, and a lot of these numbers you can, when you go in and you actually do sort of the armchair GMing and do it all, they do fluctuate a little bit. But right now, what Cap Friendly has them at is just over 2.75 over the cap, and that's before they put Michael Furland on LTIR.
Also, just on that, I do think it's also another thing to mention here is Alvin, in the media availability, does expect Tucker Pullman to be ready for camp. And I know that there's some people that will love or not love that, but good for Tucker Pullman. He played 40 games last year. He's dealing with concussions. That's another person that adds to the competition and on that side wherever he fits. And I'm not saying he's the number one defenseman, but I'm always one that just, recovering from injuries, recovering from a concussion, to see what he can do and watch what he and see where he fits within the lineup here. So doesn't hurt to have the body Tucker Pullman there, and hopefully he plays well.
And it'll be interesting to see whether a guy like Dermott, or maybe even a Burrows, because I'm not sure where Shen's going to end up in the lineup as well. So like, it'll be interesting to see like who outplays who in training camp during those 6 spots,
and whether or not they bring in the Calvin DeHaan, who has been rumored as well.
True.
I think in order to be a good playoff team, you need 8 defensemen. I don't think you can move forward without 8.
Would you put Burrows as in that like 7-8 category?
I like him in that role. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Like,
I think
you have to remember that your 8th or 9th defenseman, he's an 8th or 9th defenseman for a reason. He's not good enough to be an everyday defenseman, but he can contribute when called upon.
Exactly.
Like I'll say, you look at Michael Stone.
Yeah.
What he's been with the Flames for the past couple of years.
I think he was on the farm when the Flames interviewed Daryl Sutter this week. I'm absolutely convinced that I saw a picture of him. Kind of weird.
He's working the farm to so that
get on Daryl's good side.
So Daryl knows he's in good shape. Because apparently the Flames were not in good shape when he took over.
Who knows? Maybe he'll be first on call for calving season.
Yeah. Anything else on the Canucks?
We're gonna find out who's gonna do the audio broadcast for the Canucks here soon, right? Right?
I would hope so.
Right?
Yes. Congratulations, by the way, to Eddie Gregory. I believe. But wait, hold on. Before I
come on, boy, have patience.
Yes, congratulations to Eddie Gregory. He is the new play-by-play voice for the Vancouver Giants. So congratulations to him, as he has taken over for Dan O'Connor, who went to UBC. So, yes, I would suspect that we should know soon.
I mean, we thought we'd hear last week and nothing.
Yeah, I
if I'm gonna try and like connect all the dots here, the fact that Eddie Gregory got the Giants job, I think makes me believe that whatever we're still gonna have Bachelor on the call for audio.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Yeah.
And as a one final note, if this is the last thing that we talk about regarding the Canucks, Sean, as a longtime member, I want to welcome you to the glass half full table.
I try so hard to be positive, but it's a struggle at times, and that's one of my goals this year, is to be a little more positive and not to be as like hypercritical about minute things.
There we go. We've got a couple of other things we want to get to. I do want to spend some time because Hockey Canada again found themselves in the news for a couple of different reasons this week, and we'll get into that. Not in a good way, but there were some signings. There were 3 signings. Of course, we talked a little bit at Kirby Dach, acquired from the Blackhawks to the Canadians, signed his 4-year deal today, which means Carey Price going on LTIR. Tage Thompson signed with Buffalo last week, and Tim Stutzle. We've talked about that, and I mispronounced it. It's Tim Stutzle, signed today with the Ottawa Senators. Similar to the Thomas Chabot deal in terms of the deal, 8 years, 8.55 AEV. I posted this on Twitter, and I just don't know about giving a 20-year-old guy who's going to be a star. I really believe he is. I really like the way that he's playing, but I I find that contract just really hard to swallow. At 20 years old, is he going to be a star? Sure. Does he need to prove it? Yeah, I think he does. I'm not comfortable with this one. I'm not. I know that there's a lot of people that are like, this is a great gamble. He's going to be a star. I just don't feel comfortable with this contract for Tim Stutzle. And I feel like I'm alone on an island on this one, but
It's the way that the new market's going. Instead of paying for results, you're paying for projected results. And we're looking at a player who put up 22 goals and 58 points in 79 games last year. I know plus minus is a bit of a controversial stat, but he was a -27. All the other top Senators were not even close to that. They were a lot closer to even. And he's got a long way to go to make that contract be worthwhile. And you know what this reminds me of? Rebuild version 2.0 in Edmonton. When they
hold on. Okay, yeah.
What year exactly does 2.0 start? You need to clarify.
Here, you know.
Well, this is when they had Nugent Hopkins, Hall, and others all they gave them this. They gave them the money right out of their ELCs.
Okay, so we're talking the Hall and Eberle with Dallas Eakins as a coach sort of era.
Yeah, but they gave them money right out of their ELCs instead of it took them till fucking now to try and to look like they figured it out. I think Ottawa's in very, very much a situation where they could be dealing with that in a couple of years, where everyone's fat and happy.
It does bring the question of sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to basically say that it's a calculated risk and it could end up burning them.
Well, it brings a sense of entitlement to that room. I mean, you gave Josh Norris 7.9. You got Brady Tkachuk at
8.2.
You've got Claude Giroux at 6.5. You got to sign Alex DeBrincat. And I would highly, strongly suggest that is a priority that you sign Alex DeBrincat, by the way. So you've got me. I mean, I guess the good thing is you got your top 6 lined up, but that is a hell of a lot of money on that. I
know a lot of people are kind of high on Ottawa this year.
I'm not.
But that blue line, it's a work in progress. Yeah, they got Jake Sanderson coming up. Eric Brandstrom is just, man, talk about a player who's fallen right down the depth chart. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's not even if he falls even farther. They've got Jacob Bernard, Docker, Lassie Thompson coming up, pushing for spots. Like, I look at that and I just go, what's I don't think the Sens. I think the Sens will be, again, the pesky Sens. They will not be they won't be a free card, a free space on the bingo card, like Eric Francis said they'd be a couple of years ago.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But it's that blue line's a work in progress, and right now I would say they've got one top 4 defenseman.
I do like Artem Zub. Probably a little bit better than others, but I'm going to be interested to see what 35-year-old Cam Talbot brings to the table. Can he carry that workload? And just, there's growing pains in terms of winning. And yeah, I just don't. I think a lot of people have them as an even playoff team that are going to sweep the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I don't. I'm just not there. I mean, this is the other thing that you talk about with cup contenders and cup windows and cup this and cup that is how many, and we've talked about this ad nauseum. Sorry to bring this up again, but how many teams have failed before they won? How many teams have stumbled before they won? And I think the Ottawa Senators are going to go through a huge growing pain this year. And I think that this team is going to be a bit of a disappointment to a lot of teams this season. I'm going to make that bold prediction. I don't think that they're as good as a lot of people are saying.
I give them credit for trying to buy their way into playoff contention, but you also have to remember what division they're in. That division was set for who was in the playoffs in what? November? Maybe December? Like, they have a serious uphill climb even to just make the playoffs, regardless of what they're trying to ice, but just because of the division they're in.
I think Florida takes a bit of a step back, but I think they still find a way. So, yeah, it is tough, and yeah, like it is a gamble. All these long-term deals are gambles. Whether you're gambling on an older player continuing to play at the level that they have, or you're gambling on a player to rise up to the level that you signed them to,
or even to just play consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I'm more on the Daryl Sutter school of development. I think the player needs to earn it a little bit more, and I think giving these 8-year deals to 20-year-olds just doesn't. It's not sitting right with me, and I'm not saying that Tim Stutzle is going to be a bad player. I'm not saying that, but. Doesn't it feel like DJ Smith is on the hot seat right now?
Yeah.
Doesn't it feel like DJ Smith could be a first coach fired candidate?
If they get off to a rough start, yeah, there could be a lot of heat on the seat that DJ Smith is sitting on. But yeah, you're looking. There's a reason that Jason Robertson hasn't signed with Dallas yet.
Yeah,
it's because they've got Tom Gagliardi as the owner, and he doesn't want to give out super. I think a little of that might be some for lack of a better term, PTSD there with having to deal with the long-term deals that he has with Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, and all that. But also, it is I still think you need to prove that you can consistently put up those points. Jason Robertson coming off a really good season where he scored 41 goals, but guess what? Season before, he scored 17.
Is Robertson
in 51?
Is he on the last year of his deal?
He's an RFA.
He's an RFA. He hasn't signed yet.
Oh, damn.
The thing with Stutzle is he still has one more year on his ELC. This extension they just signed, he kicks in next season. So, but it's a gamble. It really is, and to the people saying it's well deserved, it's not yet. It could be, but it's not yet. And you're looking at a point where you're doing it. The other thing with Ottawa is they're doing it with a core that hasn't done fuck all.
Yeah.
You're looking at a core that hasn't made the playoffs, what's the goal of this of playing hockey, and what's the goal of the season? It's to win the cup. It's to be the best team. And then we're talking about a team that hasn't made the playoffs, hasn't been close to playoffs. Yes, they're young. Yes, they're building, but I'm looking at it at the point where I just look at that team and I think we talk about how the Canucks roster is flawed, and a lot of it is because they've got a lot of cap that is tied up. I could see that happening with that being an issue with Ottawa in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's a fascinating. This one is going to be fascinating. A lot of money spent on forwards. It feels a bit like where the Oilers were at. I agree with you about the rebuild, but rebuild 2.0, but I feel a little bit where they McDavid and Draisaitl were after the playoffs when they played Anaheim. I want to say back in 17.
Yeah, 17.
Yeah, that's kind of what this feels a little bit like. And so I think there's going to be.
Except they haven't even made the playoffs.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, and there's not a lot of, you bring in Claude Giroux, and I think he's a good player, but he hasn't had a lot of playoff success. There's not really that. I mean, I guess Matthew Joseph. I mean, I do like that Matthew Joseph signing, 2.9, 25 years old. He has a cup there, I guess. And you got, I just, that back end, and even Cam Talbot at 35 years old as a number one goalie with that blue line just concerns me.
Yeah, he is more 1A there. Anton Forsberg's a really good sort of 1B.
Yeah, it's kind of a more of a tandem situation as opposed to a defined like showstopper number one.
And they have Forsberg signed for 3 years at 2.75.
Yeah.
But he's 20. But he's 29 too. So,
But hey, I'll give you a comparison on the American side of the border. Craig Anderson's still playing in Buffalo.
Good old Craig Anderson.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I mean, just sorry, I'm just going to. I'll stop me here. This is all final thing I'm going to say on that entire thing is Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa. Fascinated to see what happens with all three of those teams because Detroit threw some money at some players. They threw money at Ville Husso. They threw money at Andrew Kopp. They threw money at a few other players there. Kind of in a similar situation to what Ottawa did.
Talk about like going back to what we said about what the defense market was out there. 4 times 4.75 for Ben Sherratt.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
So it's all those three teams are going to be very fun to watch just to see where they end up. Because they all have good young players and everyone's all excited saying in 2-3 years time they're going to be really good, but
until you do it, it's always just a hypothetical.
Yep.
Maybe next week we'll dig into this a little bit more, but I think I want to today we won't do it, but I do think we need to carve out some time to discuss what happened on the island and with Lou Lamoriello. Because he's taken a lot of heat for what did not happen.
I mean, you could make the same argument about what happened with the Canucks management this offseason. Basically, some proclamations were made of, hey, this is what I want to do with this team. This is the direction we're going to move. And then wasn't able to live up to the proclamation that they made.
Well, I think a lot of that goes back to, with Lou Lamoriello, goes back to what he did last offseason more than anything else.
Fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Kev said, let's discuss that next week.
Yeah, let's I anything else on these contracts?
Can't wait to see how they turn out.
Yeah. There was hockey this weekend as the Women's World Hockey Championships finally came to a conclusion. And again, another solid Canada-US game where the veterans, this was a game that the stars of Sarah Fillier and Taylor Heiss rose this entire tournament, but it's the Brianne Jenners, it's the Marie-Philippe Plans, it's the Kendall Coney Schofields, it's the Abby Rocks of the world that come and just play a hell of a game. I just wanted to talk about the game because I think the events after, unfortunately, completely derailed everything that happened here. But just for me, Ella Shelton took a huge step as a star. Just a really fun goaltending performance for Anne-Marie Despenz. And Marie-Philippe Poulin, she didn't get the goal. She got the block. And just overall looking forward. Jenna Hefford said that there's some announcements coming about the PHWA. I'm looking forward to see what is next, and I just want these players to get more opportunities to play hockey, to do what they love.
Agreed.
Yeah, it was a really fun game to watch. And then Marie-Philippe Poulin, like I want to say it's like it reminds me of the what was his name in the character in Dune 2? Xavier when La Flamme, where he has to learn how to be a two-way player and all that. Like it's a little bit like that, and it's fantastic to see.
Unfortunately, the focus of this turned sideways when Scott Smith, the embattled president of Hockey Canada, who has faced the Heritage Committee twice and has been called to step down not only by Sheldon Kennedy, but all of the political parties in federal political parties in Canada, and have been including Justin Trudeau, who hasn't called for the resignation of Scott Smith, but he has said that Canadians have lost trust in Hockey Canada, came out and presented the gold medals to the women. And Andrea Skinner talked on the first intermission about where Hockey Canada was at, and just basically defending and saying we're going to have elections in November, and we have the people in place that are going to make a change. I just think that this is a bad look for Hockey Canada again, where it feels that it's a form of tone deafness. I don't think they get it. I don't think they understand it. They're not. They haven't figured. They're not cluing in that like they need to step away and let the players shine. And I don't know what to. I don't really have the words for how profoundly confusing or what a mess Hockey Canada has turned in this offseason.
They very much come across as selfish and entitled.
Yeah.
Scott Smith thinks that he can go out and give out those gold medals and it's not going to overshadow it. Well, he was wrong. It did. That's all everyone was talking about, and not the fact that the Canadian women have won 3 championships in the span of 18 months.
Yeah, it's really too bad that he felt that he could go out there and do and present the medals. Especially because he had to travel there. I think in this situation he should have laid low.
Yeah, you can't justify that trip. If it was within Canada, that's one thing. But the fact that he had to cross the Atlantic to go do that, yeah, you can't justify that. Not when you're embattled with this whole scandal and having parliamentary hearings and all that.
The other thing about this, I fully agree, is we saw sponsors make a statement with Hockey Canada about where they were going to pull funding. And yet we saw a lot of these sponsors back on the women's broadcast. I was confused. I think that there's some confusion here about what is going on.
Well, I think part of that is more to do with it being when they hosted the World Juniors. That was in Canada. That was a Hockey Canada sort of organized event, as opposed to it being out in Denmark, where it's the Danish Hockey Association or Federation was part of that, as well as IIHF. It was literally, I think it was more so because of all that, the actual involvement of Hockey Canada was limited enough for them to feel comfortable going back.
I also think that the fact that these brands are also aware that they don't want to punish the women because they have no, like, they aren't the cause of this whatsoever. It's all the cause of these issues and scandals are coming from the men's side of things. They likely don't want to punish and diminish the women's side of things. So I think that probably played a decently large factor as far as their involvement in this tournament.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. I guess with Hockey Canada, it just there has to be change. We can't they can't continue like this, and I really do want. I don't think that. I guess to me, I don't think the message is it's not getting through to Hockey Canada. Either they're refusing to listen, or this message isn't hitting hard enough, and I don't know how to. I think the question that is in my head is the two questions in my head is how do you get that message Hockey Canada without punishing players? And again, of course, the story came out this week about the house the condo that they had in Toronto that they sold back in 2017. Another sense of that entitlement that you're talking about, Chris. And I guess the other question is how do you change it? Who comes in and makes the change? And I think those are the two really tough questions that they're facing Hockey Canada right now.
There is a little bit of entitlement in terms of like it's our business. We do what we want instead of because you are taking money from people with the sort of entry fees and every year, as well as government money, you have to answer to those, and you have to answer them without the attitude that they are showing here. If you can provide an argument that I think you can provide an argument that what having a residence where people can stay when they're visiting in a city, but I don't think that argument works there. So yeah, I think we just, as the general public, we need to continue to push. We need to continue to ask for change here. I think it will come, but we can't let up. We need to continue to call them out when they have those tone deaf moments where Scott Smith flies out to Denmark and to be there and deliver these and deliver the medals to the women who work their asses off. So, yeah,
and I'm sure the MPs that are on that parliamentary committee are going to flame them at the next hearing as well. Guys like Peter Julian has been putting a flame to their asses every time that they've had the opportunity, and I have no doubt that he's going to continue that.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Like the fact that they asked Marnie McBean, to be part of the solution, and she's like, I will if you accept that change at the top is needed. And they're like, nope. We need to continue to push because change is needed. We need to make sure that going forward that there isn't this entitlement and there isn't this just willingness to turn a blind eye.
Yep. Anything else we need to talk about?
I think that kind of wraps it up pretty nicely.
So I'll say, I've said it about a few times this podcast. I'm excited to go watch to have hockey to watch in a little bit here. And I'm excited to see what happens with the Canucks. I'm excited to see what happens with a lot of teams in the NHL too. Let's have some fun this season. Let's enjoy this. Let's not feel like we have to nitpick every move, nitpick every damn play. Hockey fandom, sports fandom is supposed to be fun. Let's have some fun.
Yep. Young stars and training camps right around the corner. I'm excited. I'm stoked. Let's get going.
Let's go. We'll have season previews coming. We have a bunch of ideas coming, so stick with us. How do we follow everyone?
I am BeardyConnect03 on Twitter.
I am at Schneid's on most social media.
Devin, by the way, happy birthday to Caitlin.
Kaylin.
What did I say?
I think you had a T in there.
Caitlin. Oh, it's Caitlin. I call her Caitlin.
I know. And I see every time you do it, and Devin's on the podcast, he's like, he tries to gently. I'm like, just get in there. Just slap some sense into Kevin.
I didn't know. It's like low heat and law heat. You don't know. But Devin is Gordhow09. Tyler, Tyler's doing a fantasy football draft. This guy that has been anti-draft this whole time is doing a fantasy football draft.
Someone dragged him into it.
Oh, okay. And I am. What's that?
I mean,
what
else happened? Someone dragged him into it, kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Maybe they threatened to shave his head.
Maybe. Oh yeah. Bald Tyler from something. KEVOLE as me. Shifts and Pucks Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. Just can I do a couple quick plugs? May I say thank you? We did do our interview with Ian Kennedy on Hockey Canada. Would encourage you to check that out. Sean and I interviewed Ian Kennedy, and he's been covering that very well. We also did an interview with Sports Radio. Tyler, Sean, and I talked to Brian Weeb, BCIT instructor, about the future of sports radio, what's going on, because I think it's a big topic. And I interviewed Kent Wilson on what's going on in the hockey content world. So I would encourage you to just check those out. Check all of our stuff out, but those in particular. Yeah. And that's it. I feel like I dragged the puck. Sorry about that. Thanks everyone for watching, listening, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Oh, sorry. Let me do this again. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.